Hey, this is Joseph from JohnTheHutDweller. Again in front of the flag, Illinois, like I always am. You know what? I was looking up stuff on the gods of Canaan. This said in a previous video that I tried to post. I don't know if you guys see it up there. Because I believe that learning the ancient religion of the Philistines and the Canaanites gives us a better picture of the God of Israel, because it's the God that is in opposition to all other gods. I think if we find out what they believed about their gods, the clashes and conflicts, and the similarities even, can tell us a lot more about the God of Israel than just looking from the Bible, than just hearing what the enemies of paganism have to say. Let's see what the enemies of Yahweh and El say. Adonai Elohim, I guess, would be the El that I'm talking about. But then there's people who believe El Elon, El Olam, which is just God Almighty, God Eternal, El Shaddai, God Almighty translated, but some people say God of the Mountain. People think that these are all different gods, but these are all titles that are given to the one God. And I know Elohim is plural, of course, but I think that's just a mistake in languages, in translation, you know. But on the other hand, it could be the other way. Uh, so I was looking up Manat a lot and El Uzza for Islam a lot, and I'd come across when I was looking up these gods, Anat, Tanat, and Astaroth are the wives of Baal, or it's not a poly. It's not like kind of like a polygamous thing. It's just different wives that were ascribed to him, and there are similarities between um, Baal and the cult that was around Mecca that worshipped Akbar and Allah and Baal and all these things. And even Hadad, one of the names of the pagan gods of Canaan, shows up down there as this thing's like Mot. But Molech is the problem that I have with most things. Molech. They always show Molech in these new videos that people, conspiracy theorists put up, that he's an owl or a bowl, and it's a brass like bowl, like heat, and then you put children into. Which no, that was an ancient torture device. I believe it was the Greeks or the Romans, maybe even the Persians. But nothing like that was ever connected to Moloch. Moloch, I believe, is just the word for violence, and, which is usual. I mean, nouns usually become gods. Fire. I mean, the word for fire in almost every language is related to a god. I mean, it's the name of a god. You know, even, but a lot of words start off like that. You know, the religion of the Philistines we don't know really anything about, and the things that we know of it mainly from their enemy, Israel. Dagon is another character. Dagon, the image that is shown is of an Assyrian man who, from below the waist, is a fish. This man clearly looks Assyrian or Akkadian or whatever you want to call it. This image was created about 300 years ago. Dagon, we don't really find any sufficient link between Dagon and the sea. It's a god of the sea peoples. But even the word Dagon we see used for different gods, basically. I mean, just like in Egypt where Horus, or if you asked about Horus, or you asked about Ra, you'd get, well, not so much Ra, but Horus, you'd get different. You'd have to ask, well, what period of time are you talking about? Because he played different roles throughout different periods. Sometimes son, sometimes father, this, that. Same thing happened with the Canaanite gods, and they had counterparts. And the strange thing is, in Rome, Egypt, Greece, Canaan, Persia, they all had the ancient Aryan gods. They all had connections. I mean, there's a parallel to Zeus and all these gods. There's a parallel to Athena. When things were Hellenized, they got, they put Zeus in front of the titles of their gods. King this, or, So there were all these counterparts. But the idea that, yeah, the pagans, they did have child sacrifice. As I said, there's an occurrence with Molech that says you shall not let your children pass through the fires. Now, is it a fire ritual? Is it a burnt offering? We don't know. And let's not kid ourselves. The Canaanites were the only ones that performed child sacrifice. And I'm not talking about Abraham and Isaac. In the book of Judges, a man prays to God and says, the first thing I see out my door I will sacrifice. What does he see? His daughter. So he believes he's under a binding covenant with God to sacrifice his daughter. So she mourns because she was going to get married, so she spends 7 months going around saying goodbye to everybody, and then he sacrifices her to God. Now, the Bible doesn't tell you to do this. You kind of look at it, and you kind of want to scream, you're an asshole. You never do that. But it's in there. And then we see women in starving times killing their children, making agreements with each other to kill their children and feed the other women, which is also disgusting and not a commandment from God. And these things show the disobedience of people. Just like Lot having incest with his daughters, this is disobedience of man. But there's always those people, oh look, the Bible commands incest and child sacrifice. No, it doesn't. Even if you believe that God told Abraham to kill his son, in the modern version of the Torah, he doesn't kill his son. Okay, so no. And it's not a command that goes out to, and your children shall do this to the remotest of generations. No. It's a one-time thing. And the reason why this story is put in there is to say stop child sacrifice. Now, if you agree with the documentary hypothesis, then Abraham really does kill Isaac. Because in the E scriptures and the Elohim scriptures, he kills his son. There really is a sacrifice take place. But luckily, through time, we don't have that burden anymore. But these gods are very interesting, and I would encourage people to look them up. And since I do this, since I look stuff up and actually read about it and take interest in it, when somebody comes up to me with an argument about Mithra or Artis or, oh, but this god influenced the Christian idea of Christ, or this, you can quickly just dispatch with these arguments. You may not change the person's mind because many people who come out with stuff like that believe they're the only ones that know anything about it, and their view is the right one, even though they did no research. They just saw a couple videos on YouTube, or they just took somebody at their word. But Moloch is not a bull. Baal and El are the gods of the bull, not Moloch. Moloch has nothing to do with an owl. Dagon, it's not half man, half fish. It's the Jewish interpretation of it. But if anybody knows anything about these gods, or knows where there's good resources more about the gods, please let me know. Peace to you.